Greetings, comrades. I am Admiral Andre. Welcome to a revisit of one of my very first series. That was, of course, Train Fever. Now, of course, today we have Transport Fever 2 already for a while, and I've played all of them, Train Fever, Transport Fever, and Transport Fever 2, extensively. In fact, it's my second most played game series after Kerbal Space Program by hours on Steam. So, I thought, back in 2016 when I recorded this Train Fever series of 13 episodes, and now I look back at that, I can see so many things that I could have done better. So I was very interested to see if I can return to that and see how we get along 5 years later. Now, the thing was, for a while, the Train Fever game and the Transport Fever ones also didn't work on with the NVIDIA graphics drivers, but they just fixed that. There was a little hot fix for that today, so I can actually do this. I've been wanting to do this for a while. Anyway, let's go. And there were about 10 people who watched that original series, and I was so proud of that because I read some stories out of an old book as well. I'll do that again, so some of those will be the same. My apologies if you were around in 2016, but anyway. Of course, we'll see how this series goes. You know me, I feverishly start something and then I drop it again an episode or two later. But anyway, we'll just see how this goes. It's just a little blast from the past, basically. So I've turned the music off just obviously for both copyright, but also just to not make it so repetitive the whole time. Anyway, so this is a completely fresh install. There are no mods whatsoever. So we're just going to go USA DLC. Of course, back then this was still a DLC. Medium world size hilly map for the same reasons that I gave in 2016, because it's more interesting. Difficulty medium 1815, and we are going to use the exact same seed that we did back all those years ago. Now I've got it on my phone here. I took a picture of that, so I just have to open that. And it is C, no, small c, big Y, 5, big G, small e, big S, and big Q. That was randomly generated back in the day, but if we use it now, it gives us the same map again. So, start. And comrades, let's pause right away. The clock doesn't stop. Of course, with the new game, Transport Fever 2, you can actually control how fast time will pass, but we didn't have that back in the day. So we just close this little welcome panel. I don't think I can learn anything from this at this point. And we just have a look around the map. So indeed, as you will see, this is exactly the same map that we had before, which is so fascinating to me because back then I read somewhere that the seeds are not always the same. Even if you use the same numbers and letters, it also is influenced by your PC, so it won't always be the same. But of course, I'm still using the same computer as I did back in 2016, because I roll that way, and we still have the same thing. So there is our beloved Riverside. I never thought I'd see you again, but here we are, back again 5 years later. Of course, back in time as well, because we ended off, I think it was in 1917 or around there, so now we're back in 1815. But we can do things better than we did 5 years ago. So there's Gainesville. I just have to get used to the mouse. Of course, it won't scroll if it's anywhere near the menus. You have to use the rest of the screen for that. So the arrow keys are better actually. So here is Gainesville, which was of course our second city to connect to. This was basically our very first line here. But I just want to see if we go to the city sizes. Berkeley, oh yes, our hated enemy, Berkeley. Right up to the end of the game, Berkeley was always the biggest city, and we were always number 2 back in Riverside. And then, of course, Gainesville was a little bit down from that. But yes, Berkeley is still our enemy, so we have to try and surpass that. And we still have this magnificent bridge over the river, or lake here at least, that someone mysteriously built, but we'll leave it just like that. So, let's have a look. Of course, last time the first thing we did was we connected Riverside to Gainesville. And then, of course, buses as well, or at least coaches. And then we went from there. So I see no reason to do things differently this time. Riverside will again be our hub. And of course the reason is still the same, because back in 2011 I visited Riverside in California. And so that's the only town here that I have a direct connection with. I don't know any of the others personally. Joliet, San Antonio, Philadelphia, Lansing, Berkeley, Houston, Huntington Beach, not near the beach, and Gainesville. So we start here. This is our home base. Now, of course, unlike Transport Fever, we have 4 zones in each city. And those are, of course, residential, which is in green as you would expect. Commercial is in red though. Industrial is in blue. And leisure is in yellow. So, as far as I assume, based also on what is the case in the Transport Fever games, people will make a separate journey from their homes to each of these destinations. So they'll go from home to work in the industrial area, then they'll go back home, go shopping in the commercial area, and of course in this game they'll go home and then go to the leisure areas as well. So that's a separate thing, which is maybe nice as well. Even though the game is old and Transport Fever 1 and 2 did everything better, there's still something about how this is made, with the 4 zones and all of that. So I think let's do again the same thing that I like to do at the beginning of each game. So since this is our town, let's connect some of these roads up. Just because, again, it doesn't look quite nice to just have it hanging here. And the town will, of course, connect it on its own. But right now, I actually need this because I want coaches to run through here. So we'll use the medium town streets. Unfortunately, demolishing some buildings there. And we get the collision problem. That was one of the big problems of this game, the terrain alignment collision. Let's see if we can do it from the other way. No. There's something about that. It's also, I think it's actually to do with this, the fact that we have a change in the road type here. So let's change this little stretch to a town road. And of course I'm going to have to learn all the controls here now. And that doesn't do anything at all. Well, it's also elevation differences. Well, we'll then just have to let the town sort it out. I can't remember what we did last time. I think we were actually able to just connect it directly. Oh, I think the problem is you actually have to manually delete the buildings. Sorry. You see, in the later games we expect that it will be auto-demolished. But no, here we have to actually do that separately. But that's okay, at least now I know. So that makes a nice loop there, and I think the rest of the town looks okay with these little extensions. We're just going to run coaches around a loop here. I think that's always a good idea. So we'll start with that. Since the commercial area is right in the middle of town, which is not always the case with Transport Fever 2, we can actually have this as our main hub right here. There, that's the hub station for Riverside, or stop at least. Then after that we will say, so this is the main commercial area. Now of course I just have to see how we're going to lay this out. This is the main industrial area, but specifically these few buildings because they're the darkest blue. So let's put it here. So the coach has to come down here, turn through one of these, and then stop somewhere here. I think that will cover it. Of course, in this game we don't get a footprint for the stations, which was a big problem. But based on what we know from later games, I think the footprint is actually quite a wide area. And that's something I was overdoing last time when we played this. So I think another one right here, and again that's near all the big homes. We could potentially do another one here, but I don't think that's necessary. We'll do one here. Now I don't know if people cross the road at different points like they do in Transport Fever. So, or if I should only put it near the intersections, but I assume there are places they can cross. So then we'll put it, wait, where are we going after that? We'll put it there. So that covers the main leisure area. Then of course this one should also reach down here. But we'll see what people do. We don't overdo it. Then new line of course. From the center of town to this one, to this one, to that one. And that's a very nice little loop. Now if we later on do need more stops, I can just include them on the loop there. Now I just of course have to name this. We're repeating history again. If you did see that original series, you will know of course that we made use of time travel as well. If you didn't see it, I certainly recommend that you go back and look at it because I'm still very proud of this Train Fever series. But we can imagine this was another time experiment, going 88 miles an hour, you know, back to 1850. So now we've learned from our mistakes, we're older, we're wiser, and now we can try again. Now here we have the same problem. I want the roads to be completed. And it will destroy fields, unfortunately. It doesn't seem to cost any more. No, of course in Transport Fever if you demolish a field it costs a lot of money. But here it doesn't actually do that. But it will take the field out. So I guess let's go to there. It does it anyway. Then there. So that's all obviously again inevitable. These fields will disappear as the town grows. Actually, let's upgrade this first. And that should make a nice loop again. So again, we'll start in the center of town of Gainesville. I think this time we'll first go to the residential area. There's two big residential areas, so we'll first just go to this one. Then we'll loop all the way around to the industry, so people can stop there for work. Then I probably actually should have not put that one there, but rather there. Then we come around here, stop here for this area. Now we are going to double back, unfortunately, but so we'll put one there, and then maybe we'll just come through here and then back up again. At least that covers all the main points. Right, new line. So we'll start in the center of town and go from there. And yes, that works very well. Again, I make the same mistake. I think it's going to auto-delete the line 1. You have to do that manually. Coach. Of course, no buses yet. Right, so that's Gainesville. Now, as I always like to do, and I have liked to do since 2016, I want to put the vehicle depots in the industrial areas because it makes sense. It's a vehicle workshop and repair shop and all of that. This one snaps to the road, which of course the modern ones don't do exactly in the same fashion. And it does do a bit of land working there, but anyway, you can always fix that later. Fit that in there. Right, delete everything and buy some vehicles. Now, of course, we only have the stage coaches right now, and I'll only buy 2, so they carry 4 passengers each. Set line Riverside coach. And hop on over to Gainesville and do the same thing here. Bye-bye. Gainesville coach. Right, that's done. Now, the other big thing, I'll start the clock very soon. I just want to read you again something. But anyway, the big mistake that I think that I also made in the original series of this was I overdid everything, including the coaches, including the train wagons, all of it, even the tracks. And of course, everything costs a lot of money. It's almost like Train Fever was more difficult than Transport Fever, especially Transport Fever 2 later on. You really have to watch out because you can't edit vehicles on the fly like you can today. You have to send them back to the depot and then have the vehicle, edited there, add or remove cars, and then send it back out onto the line. And yes, it's difficult because things take a long time to begin moving in Train Fever. On Transport Fever 2, you'll see things start moving right away, like goods. They know immediately that the line is active. Anyway, I wish I could go in slow speed, but we'll just go speed 1. Now, here's the trick. For that series, I always read a passage, not in every episode, but most of them, from a book called Head of Steel by Lennox van Onselen. That's a South African author. The book was written in or at least published in 1962, and it details the building of the railroads in South Africa in the 1800s. So it's all about the old stories, and this is a fascinating book. And because we were in the Old West here on this map, and we still are today, the stories in the book actually relate a lot to what's happening on the screen. Now, interestingly enough, people are recognizing the line is working, but I'm not going to add any more vehicles yet. We'll just let it run for a few months, So, the first part I want to read was Before the Railroad, which is why I'm doing it now. And of course it relates to South Africa, but it was the same story in many other places. Right, Chapter 1, The Road to the North. This is just a short paragraph. Travel into the interior of South Africa was a bleak and hazardous experience indeed. There were no established tracks except in the vicinity of villages. Wagon tracks crisscrossed the wide open veld, which is like a grassland, following the path of least resistance under the blue dome of the sky. The only towns of any consequence were Cape Town, Port Elizabeth, East London, and Durban. From these transport wagons, postcarts, and stagecoaches penetrated into the interior. Their courses were erratic, their timetables often non-existent. Those hardy souls who braved the unknown in these contraptions prayed not that they might arrive on time, but that they might arrive at all. The dangers to be faced were ever-present and real. All over the land there were wild beasts roaming the plains. The natural hazards were even more formidable. Swollen rivers had to be crossed. Dense brush made an almost impenetrable barrier. Various sicknesses assailed both man and beast, while on the arid plains of the Great Karoo, death from thirst and starvation awaited the unweary traveller. And then, of course, in 1870, diamonds were discovered, most prominently near Kimberley today, or what is known as Kimberley today. So, at that point, of course, everything changed and it became necessary to expedite travel into the interior because everyone was after the diamonds. And later on, gold was discovered in the Witwatersrand, which is today the area around Johannesburg, which didn't even exist back in the 1850s and 60s. And then, of course, people wanted to go there as well. So, again, this is just kind of a reflection on how, what the conditions were back in the days before the railroads. And I think it would apply on this map as well. Dying of thirst and starvation. There's barely any roads here. It's just old wagon tracks following the path of least resistance. And that's one of the things I also remarked in this series back in 2016. The way of writing in these old books is oftentimes very poetic, and you don't find that as often today. At least I don't feel that's the case. In these old books, they had such colorful and descriptive language, and the storytelling was just fantastic. So anyway, but we'll get to more of that. This was just a little background story there. Now, I just want to see if there's anything more about the coaches. Coaches, yes. All these routes passed, so this is about, again, the coach routes and which paths were preferred by people. All these routes passed through scenery of the utmost grandeur. They were preferred by some travellers who had hair-raising tales to tell of the Cape route, which passed through the dreaded Karoo. Now, the Karoo is a big semi-desert area in South Africa. You can Google that to see what it's like. Another disadvantage of the Port Elizabeth routes were that they took 8 days to the diggings, and well, now they describe how people made their way to the various dig sites. But anyway, at least they also mention here, everybody who saw the American coaches, carts and wagons enthusiastically praised their design and comfort. The fare was £12 and the baggage allowance £30. They had to map out new routes to cut down the travelling time to 5 days. Anyway, so now they describe a bit more how it becomes more efficient with the American wagons, which were obviously imported. But now it becomes time for us to actually make a train line. For us, it's not to digging sites, but just between these two towns. I just want to see if I can switch off the costs which keep coming up here. I don't know if that was possible in this game. Later on you could do that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So at least here in Riverside things look okay. The coaches seem to be doing alright. They're relatively full. Gainesville, it was a little bit more of a wait time here for these people, but the coach is there now, so I just added the one more because it's a longer route. Anyway, now it's time to build the train tracks, comrades. And now, of course, we just have to think about this. So, of course, our friend is the contour line. Now, let's just have a look. Riverside is, of course, in this quite flat area. And I remember back in the day we put the station here because it's also the flattest area and we just follow the river here. The big problem that we had here, though, was a lot of hold-ups because we used the oil here, the oil source, coming down over this mountain, which was very, very steep, and the trains were so slow. And then it would stop down here, or no, down here, and then another train would come through over the passenger main line to the oil refinery, and then goods. Of course, this works totally different compared to Transport Fever and Transport Fever 2. Here you just have generic goods. Everything is made into goods. Then some of the goods actually traveled by their own over the roads to the town, while others were of course then taken by another train to the station here and then by wagon. So that's also the big difference. This is a little bit more of a crossover between Transport Fever and Railroad Tycoon. And of course in Railroad Tycoon 3 we had goods moving on their own over the map, and we see that here as well. Like right here, we have planks being moved to the sawmill and then goods being moved back to the town, which I think is a really interesting thing, which is why even though Train Fever is a very old game now, it still has certain things that Transport Fever lost, you know, and that's why it makes it still interesting to play. Now there's no cargo being moved here as we know from the old days, but I just want to see if there's not a better way to do things. We've got lots of coal around this part of the map. Lots and lots of coal. So who makes use of the coal? Of course the industries were more limited back then. So we'll just have a look. So that's basically just a steel mill. So all that we have in this game are iron ore mines, oil wells, sawmills, coal mines, oil refineries, steel mills, and that's it. So it's basically logs or planks to logs to planks to goods, or it's oil to goods, or it's iron and coal to goods. That's it. Those are your only choices. But still, that's very interesting. Now we don't have... Oh, I actually do have a steel mill up here. But now, the real problem with this, back in 1850, the locomotives were, of course, very weak. So we can't really climb these hills. Now, somewhere we should be able to see what the actual altitude is. I can't remember if it does show us that. It doesn't look like it. Maybe if I open up a menu. There is a place where you can see that, but I've forgotten how to do that with this game. It's not here. No, maybe it shows somewhere in a corner that I don't see. But anyway, of course with Transport Fever you can see the exact elevation. So in any case we can see it's quite an aggressive climb here. All the way up to here, but this part especially, and that's where our trains got down to about 3 kilometers an hour, which is 1 point something miles per hour, I think. So we definitely want to avoid that. What's down here? There's an oil refinery. What if we ship the oil there? The goods should not move on their own. It's too far, I think. And then we bring them back to the town. Yes, so we can control the movement of the goods. But anyway, first of all, the other thing is also, I don't know if you can drop off cargo at passenger stations like you can in Transport Fever 1 and 2. Anyway, so let's just have a look. A passenger station. Now, we don't have end stations here, but that doesn't matter. Now, I'm just wondering if we should make this a dedicated station, you know, that doesn't go through. It just stops here like that. Then a main line passes through here, so they don't actually have to stop on the main line. That's not a bad idea. Of course, if we have a main line, we want to keep it clear. You don't want stops on the main line, which is another thing I learned since playing the game in 2016. Now, this is the most kind of into the town that I can get. We could, of course, put it out on the side here, which is close to that stop, and probably not a bad idea. And it's flat here. So I think we will do that. Then we can always branch the tracks to the east and to the west. Just maybe turn it a little bit. 60,000 is not bad. Then we'll have another one here. Again, passengers. Last time I think it was here somewhere. We could do it here and then connect straight up. Then of course the trains have to go around on the outer edge. We could even put it here. Just delete that bit of road. Yes, because we're not going to continue further. And there's still a passenger one? Yes. I think the goods ones look totally different. Anyway, so I think that's okay. It doesn't show... Or will it show actually how far the catchment is? I don't think it does. You can't really tell. Will that be enough? We'll see, I guess. Maybe they can walk this part. I mean, if they can walk from the center there, they should be able to. Then we'll just connect a single line here, not a double track. The track is very expensive in this game, so we want to be judicious with our application of this expensive new technology. 55,000 and a nice straight piece of track. Then it will just curve along the river and then connect up here. So I guess we could do it from this side as well. 120, it does not matter at all at this point. And this is again totally different. Last time we followed the other bank. If we look at the river, the map from this angle, which we did last time too, then of course this is the south and this is the east. So it took the south bank of the river. Good old train fever. And then I guess we just gently curve it like that. Now it's making this kind of wobbly shape. I don't think we'll do that. Let's try and make a straight connection up to there. And maybe pull this back a little. Not that far. Now I have to do that part again. And then connect it 120, so that if one day we get to a point where we have fast trains, it will run better. So there's our new line, comrades. The train has come finally to the Old West here. Now, where are we going to have a rail yard? Now this rail yard, unlike again what I did last time, we had 2 rail yards and I don't want that. We just want 1 because we don't want to pay for 2. But of course first connect the stations. Beautiful. And this one obviously is already. Now we can also even have a tram track, but I don't think that's the thing yet. We'll wait on that. So do we have our rail yard in Riverside or in Gainesville? Probably in Riverside because it is our hub. So these fields have to go. Now, unfortunately, it kind of just, you can't build it on its own. You have to attach it to a rail. So we'll just do that. Speed here is not important at all. And we can always continue straight through there or possibly even curve that way. It's not snapping to straight, but that's alright. So we'll build it again close to the industries because, I mean, it's an industrial building. There, so the people in Riverside actually work at the rail yard as well. Don't know how that will affect the actual growth of the town. That's another thing. Maybe I'll just put the road around this part here to just help the town. Of course, the problem with train fever was you couldn't make strangely angled crossings like this. They have to be pretty straight. But I guess what we can do, and this is to help the town because I doubt they will figure that out. Even that's a problem. Please build track over street. Oh, it's another one of those things. Anyway, once the town grows, we'll worry about that. Let's not worry about it now. So the first thing again is to make the line from Riverside to Gainesville. Here we are. And turn off the contours and the cargo as well. We'll worry about cargo next time. And just put a train together. And it's the Baldwin 6 wheels. So it's, of course, just 40 kilometers an hour. So we'll buy that one and we'll buy a few of these passenger cars. But here's the big thing that I did wrong last time. I would just put like 6 of them on and just let the train run. But then it's going to run empty for a long time before passengers actually start really filling that train. So we're going to just put, how many people can you take? 14. We'll take 1. That's it. Thank you very much. Put you on the line. Once 14 people consistently ride on that train, then we'll send it back and upgrade it. Because we are not wasting money. There's the Pullman wagon again, going out of the station for the very first time. Right, now of course I like to ride along with my trains. I still like to do that. And again with the first inaugural route. Can we paint them? No, we don't have that power yet. That was a godly power we only learned later on in Transport Fever. But anyway, while we do this, I'm going to tell you the same story I told last time. Because it's still extremely fitting. So let me find that. Here, I'll read you a little bit extra as well, while we take the train slowly. This is a relaxing game. It's supposed to be played in a relaxed manner, so be ready for that. So here we go. So now that the trains have come to Cape Town, first they were built in Durban, but that was just a short bit of track by the harbour. The first proper line was made in Cape Town, and that was in the 1860, I think, just after 1860, maybe, well, around there, anyway. So here we go. The track is not very far yet, but we'll go with this part. Let's just see. We are informed by a superior clerk that the passenger wagon leaves Cape Town at 7 a.m. on the morrow. We pay over our £12 each, receiving a pink voucher. This entitles us to travel by train to the terminus at Wellington on the first stage of our journey. So that's how far the trains were, and Wellington is not very far from Cape Town. Rations have to be taken along, and our baggage may not exceed 35 pounds in weight. The following morning is all bustle and excitement at Cape Town railway station. The buildings are of wood and iron. They have nothing to recommend them, nor has the train which just pulled up in the confines in the station. We display our vouchers and are allowed to fight for seats, plain wooden benches, inside the carriages. The train is crammed with people who have but one topic of conversation: diamonds. The wagon on which we are to continue our journey from Wellington is trucked on an open bogie, so the actual wagons are also put on the train. Our pink voucher entitles us to travel second class. We are moved out from our it's funny, we're moved out from our first class compartment, so they actually try to sneak into the first class, and told to find seats in the second class carriage. It is terribly crowded, but after a few ticketless persons have been thrown out, we find seats just as the train groans out of the station. According to my timepiece, it is 7:25 a.m. The novelty of travelling by train at this colossal speed somewhat compensates for the discomfort. We are travelling at no less a speed than 30 miles an hour. We sit back exhilarated by the swift passing of the landscape, contemplating this 60-mile stretch of railway track in our mind's eye. The cost of it all was prodigious. The problems that had to be overcome before it became a reality, and the suspicion and distrust with which it is even now surrounded, were almost insurmountable. The country through which we are now passing is thinly wooded with flat stretches of fallow ground that does not give the impression of sterility. There are no houses to be seen. In our compartment, on a seat opposite me, there is a burly old farmer, shaggy in his rough countryman's clothes. I lean over and ask him why the countryside is so sparsely cultivated. He tells me that the farmers fear fire, that this hellish contraption of a locomotive, this work of the devil, has set fire to the countryside on more than one occasion. I inquire why he travels by train if it displeases him so. He replies gruffly that he is in a hurry to get home, where his cow is expected to calve at any moment. He rumbles in his beard that mankind was not intended to be hurled over the good earth at speed. With an ox wagon, he says, a person may still pull up in time before going over into the bottomless abyss that encompasses the flat earth. I remind him that the world is round, not flat as he surmises. The old Boer farmer stares at me incredulously, then informs me indignantly that it does not behove a young man to make fun of his elders. And then they just explain, it seems that the farmers gave ground for the railway as far from their houses as possible. They did not only fear the incendiary effect of the locomotive, but also deep within them they harbored a burning resentment towards all progress, towards any newfangled development that might interfere with their habitual way of life. They referred to the Bible, pointing out that man was intended to rely upon beasts of burden for transport and the garnering of his harvests. Engines were not mentioned in the Bible, therefore no provision was made for them. That they exist is a reality let me just reread that. That they exist in reality is a sin in itself and a fact to be ignored. And then they just describe a bit of the rest of the journey. But that to me is again so very descriptive, and it shows that there was not an acceptance really of trains at the very early days. People were quite apprehensive towards these hellish, devilish machines. I don't know if it was the same in other parts of the world, but in any case, that is how it was here. So, anyway, it makes sense, to read that because we are in the very early stage, and it seems like some people are willing to take the train, but others are still a bit more apprehensive. And it's interesting that that old farmer, even though he hated the locomotive, he was still willing to take it because it got him to his farm quickly. So that was the one selling point. Anyway, so I think it was very sensible for us not to have a longer train yet. We'll just let this one run. And if it comes to the point where we need another train, we'll have a passing siding here, not a whole double track. We shouldn't be too ambitious. Now, what are we going to do about cargo? We have a couple of refineries here next to the lake. And of course we have the one down here as well. That's the thing now, so it's not going to help carrying between those. It's the same thing, and this as well. What we need is oil. And the only oil that is to be found anywhere in the vicinity is right here on this plateau. So, what do? Do we make the same steps that we did last time and bring the oil out from the mountains down to the flat area around the river? Or do we try and find another source? Let's try and find another source. There's some lumber as well. There's another oil well there as well. It seems we actually don't have much of a choice. If we want to supply cargo to these two towns, that's basically what we have to do, unless we take another approach. Let's see if they move already. No, well, one piece of wood is moving down this road, so we can facilitate that, but we won't really have competition from wagons, you know, normal road wagons. So I think that's what we'll do. Of course we have to deal with a very treacherous terrain here. So that's down on that line, and so is that one. But here we'll probably have to tunnel. Then we continue around the very outside edge. And that's a good question. What then? Do we then continue through the town? Of course, now we don't have to deal with emissions like we do in Transport Fever 2, so we can build whatever we want, wherever we want. And then maybe still double the track, or at least add another pair of, an extra siding for 3 trains then to deliver cargo to Riverside. Maybe we can do that. So I think let's build that. Begin with this. So of course a cargo station. We won't mess with the length yet. It is at the shortest now. And let's just see if I can make it nice. Now of course the terrain is changing here. So I guess we don't have too much of a choice. I don't want very, like this. Now it will leave the station on a high elevation. So I think it will have to be up here. Right there. Of course we can ignore the other side of it for now. Then we'll just put a little country track here. And that is certainly, I hope, within the range. Again, I don't think you can tell. It will just move on its own there. Because it's anyway willing to move on its own all the way around. So then we'll put up another station. Somewhere here. Now after that, of course, we'll have to turn down here. So maybe even like this, then we cut through the bottom here. It's difficult to say. Maybe up here, we'll do that. But we're almost out of money. So the next step again, just a little track that connects. and then of course the railway. Generally staying flat, but at some points it's unavoidable. So this will probably not be a very high speed thing because I want to avoid huge land works like that, so we'll probably have to curve the tracks quite a lot. Once this is done, comrades, I'll get back to you. Right, we're at the tunnel now, comrades, so I have to take out some more loans. We start with a $2 million loan, so this is something we just have to be really careful of. Anyway, there it is, unavoidable. So the track just goes, you see it curves a bit here. Going straight would have been a bit of a real terraforming operation, even though this is still quite something to behold. So anyway, it will slow down around here later on. Right now the trains can't go the speed limit yet, so it's okay. So then it will bring the actual lumber here, and then of course we still have to take the goods back to Gainesville. We're not going to worry about Riverside yet. Now it's a real pity I can't actually make a cargo station, you know, edit this so it's both. It has to be one or the other. But maybe we can kind of cheat a little by just having them right next to each other. Not perfect, but not terrible. Actually, that pretty much looks like a single station. The length is maybe a little wonky, but it's okay. Now we just have to get through this part of town, which is, of course, what I said we wouldn't do. Oh dear. Maybe we can work our way through here. That's fine. Again, the speed is not always going to be fantastic, and that's okay. Just like in real life, we can't always have that. Now we need more money. I think this series will have the same struggles as the other one. Borrow, 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 borrow. And we'll stay on that level down there. This is still going to be a bit of a climb. And once I'm done, I'll be back with you again. Good grief, comrades, this was quite a struggle, and now we are sitting with a $4.4 million loan. As you can see, I've tried a couple of different options here, and unfortunately you don't get a lot of money back, barely anything if you delete the track, and of course the terrain modifications remain behind as testament of our efforts. So anyway, this actual hill here was way too sharp, a lot sharper than I was hoping, and so of course we go through the town and then another tunnel there, and then we climb all the way through here, and then of course we continue on. But really we have to get this. There you can see the terrain has also been worked on. But this is something that we have to have. We need to get a cargo line, and I hope it will be profitable enough. At least we don't have to deal with wagons. We just bring it straight into the station there. And of course with a road. Now let's see. Smaller road than that. It looks a bit strange. I think we'll just bring it in like that. So then, where are the industries in the town? It happens to be this area anyway. That's not planned, but it's a good thing. So the cargo will just move there on their own. So that should not be a problem. I can delete that. So now I think the unfortunate problem is now, again, even though I said I didn't want one, we do need another train rail yard here. But I guess this one can just be temporary. So I guess let's just twist that out a little. Not enough space. Or we could just do it on the other side, I guess. Right here. More money, please. Yikes. But anyway, so that's ugly, but that will not stay like that forever. So now we just have to make another line. So actually this line is probably worse than the original line that went for the oil. But anyway, then it will stop there and pick up the goods and then bring it to the town. Now I don't know how quickly the goods are produced, but maybe for the first few trips I'll just force it to go between the two here. Actually, let's delete the last one. Just get the goods to start building up there. I'm not sure if it works like that, but we'll see. Now I need more money. More money, bank manager. One of those, and the other problem is, of course, goods need boxcars. But that's okay. We'll use both. Or maybe two separate trains, actually. So maybe this was a good thing. Let's just see this. So we'll put just two on there. And for now, just line one. Let's just see what happens. While the passengers are also developing more interest in our line. So let's put the cargo overlay. This is again the problem. It takes a long time to register interest. But this is a very noteworthy line here. Had to do some clever engineering here. So there's one. And this should go up there. It does. So at least the forest here has started to realize we are offering it another path. I shouldn't have done two wagons at first anyway. Right, so that's working. I'll read you one last thing from the book. The same thing I also read last time. Just have to find it here. So while the cargo is building up, I'll read you this. This is again showing some resistance to the railway. So they were building now the train line past Wellington in Cape Town to various other places. The line passed, but I think this was actually before the line to Wellington was built. This was during the actual construction. The line passed Muldersvlei and Klapmuts. The work went forward with a swing. The directors of the company rubbed their hands with satisfaction. The optimists among the shareholders began to do little sums in their heads, working out their profit. The engineer, Brunger, allowed himself a smile of quiet satisfaction. One morning, as the line was nearing Paarl is a town outside Cape Town, the construction camp was suddenly thrown into a flurry when a message was passed back from the men working on the earthworks to head of steel, which is, of course, the head of steel is where the tracks are being laid, that a mounted commando was approaching. The engineer climbed a derrick, instructed his men to take up positions in the rear, while he waited for the horsemen to approach. The spokesman for the commando was Reverend van Lingen. He inquired of the engineer whether the railroad would bypass Paarl. Brownger informed him that the municipality of Paarl had granted permission for the railroad to pass through the town. He explained that the government had dealt with these matters when the line was first surveyed. Reverend van Lingen then turned to his followers and addressed them. The councillors of the Paarl municipality are the ones selected to preserve our rights and privileges. It shall be made known to them that they were not given any mandate on election to dissipate these rights and privileges. We, the citizens of Paarl, most strongly object to this infernal machine passing through our town to disturb its serenity. They turned their mounts and trotted away to a chorus of jeers and catcalls from the riffraff in the rear. This minister and a considerable following tried by every means to dissuade the Paarl municipality from allowing the train to pass through Paarl. The council, however, could not allow this opportunity to foster trade slip through their fingers. They tried by every means to convince the townsfolk that it was to their advantage to have a ready access to Cape Town as an outlet for their considerable amount of produce that was produced in the district. Their pleas fell on deaf ears. Reverend van Lingen now circulated a petition which was signed by large numbers of residents. Armed with this petition, the Reverend and some of the church elders formed a deputation to the governor, British governor. The government, who had too much to stake, refused to consider the matter. The railroad approached Paarl, passed through it and beyond, before the Reverend made his next move. In fact, he had been slowly gaining support from the majority of his congregation. When the matter had smouldered for 1 year and 5 months, the last section of the line was opened for traffic to Wellington, so that was during the construction. The very first Sunday the train passed through Paarl, the dominie, the Reverend, stopped in the middle of his sermon and announced to the congregation that it was a sin for the train to run on a Sunday. He added that the thing made so much noise that he could hardly think, let alone speak. Now the minister and his church council brought their well-laid plans to effect. They called a meeting which was attended by large numbers of people. At this meeting they announced that they were forming a stagecoach company to compete with the train. If it was properly supported by the townsfolk, the stagecoach could very well put the train out of business. Before long, the Paarl Omnibus Company was established. It had an impressive list of shareholders, among whom were some of the foremost residents of Paarl. The names of these shareholders were laboriously written down in longhand on a scroll some 20 feet in length. This document may be seen today in the Huguenot Museum in Paarl. The stagecoaches ran between Cape Town and Paarl on every day of the week, including Sundays. How the Reverend and his elders reconciled their consciences with allowing the coaches to run on Sundays will never be known. The shareholders of this company stipulated that they would discontinue their activities the moment the Sunday trains were withdrawn from the route. At first, the Cape Town Railway Company treated the affair as the joke of the year. As time went by, however, the coaches received more and more support. The Cape Town Railway Company was never at any time a flourishing concern. Soon the railroad was doing no business at all on this section of the line. Eventually a meeting of shareholders of the railway was called. It was explained to them that trains ran between Klapmuts and Wellington on Sundays but without a passenger. Put to the vote, a motion was carried to suspend Sunday services on the last section of the line. It is interesting to note that, and this is of course in the 1860s, that it was built there, this all took place. But it was interesting to note that in a timetable of the Cape Government Railways for November 1894, 30 years later, No trains ran through Paarl to Wellington on Sundays. Commuters were only able to travel as far as Klapmuts. The Reverend had won the day, and the day had extended into almost half a century. So it's very interesting again. It's still interesting to me that there was such an opposition to the railway passing through a town that the Reverend and his followers actually formed a stagecoach company to compete, and they were so successful they forced the railway not to run through their town on a Sunday. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, so now the next time train number 1 comes back to Riverside, we will just have it add another wagon, because the demand has grown, unlike in the story where there was no demand at all because they competed. So what was also bringing this on now is to see if the cargo will actually use our train, because we don't want them competing and using the roads with imaginary wagons. So of course we don't want that. Now I'm not sure if it's using it because it might not do it because there's no destination yet for the goods. That could be the case. You see, it's staying there. So I think we should urgently add another train to deliver the actual final product. That should be better than having the same train but with 2 types of cargo. Anyway, that's for another time, comrades. It's 1852 and we've made quite a long railroad here. I hope this will be a flourishing concern, because this is quite a steep climb here. And we'll see, but we certainly do have interest in the towns, and maybe we can do things better this time. So, have a great day, comrades. See you next time.